Hey folks, happy Halloween. I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, donut connoisseur, astronaut, and we've got a fun marketing challenge today, creating some spooky movie posters. We'll be using some tricks to make some spooky spider webs. There are going to be links in the description below this video where you can find links to download your free resources to create along with us today. There's going to be a starter file in there, and once you open that up, you're going to see that I put together this really cool template for you with some general information. So we're going to be making movie posters, so I added a space for the title, the producer, all the kind of information that you might see on a typical movie poster, depending on the type of movie poster you're creating. So you might want some different information here. I've got down here a credits block for you, and all of this is going to be live text, so you can go ahead and edit this if you wish and put in your own title. I've already asked the chat for some title suggestions and got some great ideas, including arachnauts in space, which is very fitting for my costume today. But if you want to use a different type of poster, so say this is like a teaser poster coming soon, you can go ahead and swap that out with the dates. I've got a link in your resources that goes over all the different types of movie posters, all the different styles, so you can kind of look into that and decide what style of movie poster you want to create. So today, like I mentioned before, we're going to be making a spider web. So we need some spider-themed titles for our movie here. But first of all, when I'm making a movie poster, I like to try and put little hints to the story in the design. So to get started, we're going to add a spider web to the background so that we can kind of start to build this out and have it be kind of on theme for our movie, right? We know that it's going to be about spiders, right? So there's a couple of ways we can go about doing this. I'm going to show you the way that I like to do it using the star tool, because it lets us make modifications really, really easily. So navigating over to my shapes over here, if I click and hold down on my shapes, you're going to see that I can pick a bunch from this list. You might see that the ellipse tool is maybe the one in your toolbar, but just hold down on whichever tool you kind of see there. We're going to drop down into our start tool. Now, I've got smart guides on. I want to point that out as before I get started. You can see these little, they're like pink lines that appear over my artboard. You can turn those on if you go up to the view menu at the top, and I drop down in there. You can see it's checked out down here, smart guides. If it's got the little check mark next to it, that means that it's active. And that's just going to help me today as I start to line things up. We're also going to use the align tools, but it's a kind of a good way to get started. And when I click and I drag out a star, you're going to notice that it's kind of like rotating around, right? So we're going to want to hold down Shift, and that's going to let us constrain that to be sort of not, a weird angle when we're done making it. We want it to kind of be nice and like 90 degrees, right? So I'm just going to drag this over here. And a couple things I want to point out about the star tool, which is kind of unique, and this is relatively new, although not super new. The star tool is a live, like a live shape, which means that I get these different options when I am using the selection tool with my bounding box here. As I hover around, you'll notice there's two little circles, an outer one and an inner one. Those change the radius, so I can make the inside points farther out or closer in if I want really, really sharp points. And I can do the same thing here with the outer edge here. I can drag this out to make these super, super long or bring them back in. I think bringing them in makes a really nice little sunshine kind of a shape. I'm just gonna leave them at the default by hitting undo. The other thing I wanna point out is that you can drag the rightmost set of arrows up and down to increase or decrease the number of points, which we're gonna get to a little bit more in a second. I'm just gonna start with the basic star though. So I brought it back down to 5 points here. If you ever need to reference the number of points that you have with your star tool, if you hover over this and you click on it, it'll actually tell you the number as you drag. That's going to become important in a second here. So we've got our star dragged out. Now, this doesn't look like a spider web yet, and we're going to round our corners out to make it look like a spider web. I'm also going to change this to be the default fill and stroke to make it a little bit easier to see. So I just clicked on this. Down to the bottom here, if I hover over, it'll say default fill and stroke, white fill, and a black outline. Now again, there's a number of ways you could do this. If I want to, I can click on just the direct selection tool, and that lets me round all of the corners out at once. Not really what I want. I can also go through here and I can hold down Shift and click on all of these points individually to select them. Now, depending on how complex of a shape that I have, that might start to get really annoying, especially if I have a lot of points to select. So another way that you kind of select a lot of points that are kind of like inside or maybe a little bit difficult to select is using the Lasso tool. So I'm going to switch over to the Lasso tool here, and I'm just going to drag and draw a shape around the points that I want to select. You may have used the Lasso tool in something like Photoshop. It behaves a little bit differently here, and that it's kind of a way to select multiple points all at once. So you can kind of create these weird selection areas, and anywhere that I draw is going to actually select just those points. So it's really handy for making weird selections to manipulate specific points. In this case, I'm going to drag to select all of the center ones, and then I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool and selecting these little targets here. These are my live corners. You can see when I hover over it, it gives me a little arc icon. When I drag these out, you're going to start to see the very web-looking center of a spider web there. Now, the really, really cool thing about this and using this technique to create a spider web is I can continue to modify this after the fact. So all I've done is round the corners here. I can click on this again, this little number of point slider, and I can drag this up and down to increase and decrease the number of points. So all of this stays very like non-destructive, very editable as we're working, right? So we can make these adjustments and it's going to stay consistent, right? So we've got kind of our first shape here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this fill because we're only working with lines with our spider web. So I just click to bring the fill to the front and select none. You can also select none from over here in the swatches panel as well. All right, so we've got the webbing. Now we need to make sort of the structure of our spider web. So the way that I like to do that is using a tool, one of my favorite sort of obscure tools, which is the polar grid. I've already actually got it activated over here, but it might not be activated on your toolbar, so if you don't see it, if you click and hold, you probably see the line segment tool. So if you see the line segment tool, click and hold, or any one of these, right? And this is a cool thing about Illustrator. There's all these like hidden tools inside of your toolbar, wherever you see this little sort of triangle in the lower corner there. So I'm going to switch to the polar grid tool, and I'm just going to drag it out so you can kind of see what it looks like. If we increase and decrease using the up and down arrows, it's going to add these concentric circles that kind of radiate out. It kind of makes it look like a target or a kind of type of a shape, or like a radar. And then if I use the left and right arrows, I'm going to change the number of these radiating straight lines that come out from the center. So up and down arrows are going to make concentric circles, and the left and right arrow keys are going to make radiating lines. And then holding down Shift is going to allow me to constrain my circle. Holding down Shift and Alt or Option is going to let me drag out from the center. So if we were to navigate to the center of our shape using Smart Guides and drag out holding Shift and Option, we can create this design here that kind of stays snapped to the center of our web. Now, this gets to be a lot of keyboard shortcuts to hold down while you're working. If I have to hold down Shift, I have to hold down Alt or Option, and I have to try and reach the arrow keys. So there's another way that you can set this up to kind of be correct before you draw your shape out, and that's by double-clicking on the tool. So if I double-click on my polar grid tool, I'm going to get a whole bunch of options that lets me specify the exact shape that I want before I create it. So you can see down here, this is the size, and then we've got the concentric dividers. Those are those concentric circles. That's that word again. They're kind of radiating out circles from the center. We don't actually want any of those, so I'm going to set that to 0. It's going to give me an outside circle because that's just kind of how the tool works. It has, you know, the circle on the outside. But I'm going to set it to 0 because I don't want any shapes or circles at the center of my object. And then radial dividers, this is going to be the number of radiating lines out from the center. So this is where you need to remember the number of points, and you need to kind of reference back to your star shape. And you need to set that number of points from your star shape as the radial divider. So those numbers should be the same. And as long as they're the same, all of your points should line up. So I have 8 points on my star. I'm going to have 8 on my radial dividers. If you need to kind of, I know this is a lot of information, so you can always watch the replay if you scroll back. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to show you what this looks like because it's a little bit easier to see it after I've kind of explained it. So hovering over the center, now I only really need to worry about those 2 keyboard shortcuts, right? If I start to drag this out, Shift and Alt or Option. And when I click on that and I drag it out, you can see that my shapes align perfectly with the outer points of my webbing. So now we've got sort of the structure of our web, and we've got the web itself. So I can tell you right now that the most difficult parts of this task are over. If you've gotten this far, then the rest of it should get easier from here on out. But like I said, there's a replay available. Speaking of, over on Adobe Live on the YouTube and on the Behance, where I've been asking folks for movie title suggestions. We have a live chat. You can hang out with everybody and ask any questions if you're having trouble with what I'm doing. You can also leave comments on YouTube if you're watching the replay. So now I'm going to select all of my shapes, and I'm actually going to, let's do a couple of things. So first, I'm going to select all of my shapes, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to align these. So there's 2 different ways you could go about aligning these. Actually, there's a lot of ways you go about aligning these. But with the workspace that I have the Essentials Classic workspace. So under Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic, you get this control bar at the top, where you have the Align drop down right here. You can also open up the Align panel, or you can do this from the Properties panel. So you have a lot of options here. No matter where you decide to do it, you're going to want to make sure when you do this, under your Align options, there's this little setting here for all of them that's like a little drop down or like a little set of icons. You want to make sure that you pick Align to Artboard. So we want to make sure that we're aligning this to the center of our artboard because we want our web to kind of radiate out from the center of our poster. So if I just choose Align to Selection, it's not gonna align it to the center of my artboard, which is this white box here. I want to just make sure I have Align to Artboard, and with both objects selected, I'm gonna horizontally align the center, and then I'm gonna vertically align center. So now I'm confident that my design is centered on my artboard while I'm working through this. Sorry, I need to adjust my helmet a little bit. All right, so the next step in our process is going to be to check a setting. So when I am scaling this up, because we're going to want to have our spiderweb scale fill our artboard, I want to make sure under Preferences, I have Scale Corners checked. So at the top in your control bar, if you click on Preferences, or again in the Properties panel, this option here, Scale Corners, is going to make sure that when I scale up my shape, it's changing that corner radius for my live corners so that my corners stay the same degree of roundness that they are from the original shape. If I don't have this checked on, it's not a big deal, but what does happen is that you might have your corners get a little bit less round and you might just need to readjust those live corners. So to save yourself the hassle, just make sure that that's checked on. Clever saying, step 1, weave web. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit. Yeah, 100%. All right, so we've got all of the components that we need. We're gonna make a blend next. So I've got my center spiderweb. I'm actually gonna scale this down a little bit, holding down again, Shift and Alt or Option to scale it down a little bit to make it smaller. And then I'm going to copy and paste this shape. So I'm gonna use Command C to copy, Command or Control C to make a copy, and then Command or Control F to paste in front. You can find all of those commands under the Edit menu, so you could just go to Copy and then paste in front from there. Now, I only want to select one copy of my spider web, so I'm just going to click on it, and then I'm going to hold down Shift to select my polar grid. And with both of those selected, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and then I'm just going to scale these up. I want the polar grid, and I'm going to select this one. Again, I'm using Shift and Alt or Option to scale from the center. And I'm just going to scale both of these up so that they extend beyond my artboard. Now I don't need to worry about anything that's extending beyond my artboard because when we go to export this, only the things that are on my artboard are going to export. So it's okay if things kind of extend off of my artboard. If you want to see what they look like, you can go to View and turn on Trim View. And this is what my design is going to look like when it exports. So just make sure that you uncheck Trim View if you want to go back to editing because it can be a little bit hard to work with. But that's just kind of, I wanted to just kind of show you that you can kind of, you don't have to worry about the stuff that's outside of your artboard. All right, there's one more step I'm going to do, and this is just to make everybody's eyes a little bit help everybody out a little bit, I'm going to increase the line weight. It's a little bit light right now. So again, in either of these panels, anywhere you see the stroke or in the stroke panel itself, you can increase the stroke weight. So I'm just going to click inside of this box and use my up arrow until I get it to be a little bit heavier, so it's a little bit easier for everybody to see. All right, now we've got all of our steps set up for success. We're going to make a blend. Now I'm going to show you a little tip here. If you have a little bit of trouble with this, you don't have to use this technique. I just find it helpful, so I figured I'd share it. Normally when I make a blend, I'm going to select my outside object, select my inside object. I'm holding down Shift to select them both. You go to Object, Blend, Make, and then after you make it, you're like, oh, I need to adjust it, and then you have to go to Object, Blend, Blend Options, you have to adjust. You can actually do this before you even make your blend. Again, using those tricks from the toolbar. If I go over to my blend tool and I double click, it actually is going to give me the option to change my blend settings before I even use the tool. So a handy way to set this up before you even make a blend, double click and you can kind of change the settings in here. By default, it sets a smooth color. Specified distance is if you had a specific distance you wanted between your steps. And then specified steps gives you a specific number of steps. And you can kind of eyeball it just by looking at your shape and determining like how many individual shapes do I need between each of these for this to look good. Generally, when you have smooth color, what I found is one of two things happens. It either gives me a million lines and just looks like a giant block of lines, or it gives me exactly one. So I almost never use smooth color. I almost always specify the number of steps that I want. So in this case, we could do something like 3. That's going to give us 1, 2, 3 between our first and last objects. You could go up to 5. It's really up to you, depending on the size of your artboard and the blend that you're making and what looks good. And then we're going to hit OK, and nothing's going to happen yet because now we actually need to make the blend. And this part can be a little bit tricky, but what you basically want to do is you want to try to select in the middle of this loop here, and then you want to select the exact same spot. So I'm just clicking on the smaller shape. So you can see sometimes you get a little bit, things get a little bit wonky and this doesn't always work so well, in which case if you're having a lot of trouble with this or you mess things up, you can go up to Object, Blend, and Release, and that's going to release the blend so you'll get back to your base shapes, and you can just go to Object, Blend, and Make. I just wanted to show you kind of an alternate way you can set up your blend, just so you're not having to go navigate to that menu a lot. Alright, so now we've got our spiderweb. We need to add some color and some life to this, and some of our lovely suggestions for titles from the chat. So I'm going to switch back to my rectangle tool. I'm going to go ahead and minimize my properties for the time being. Now I do want to point something out. Another little pro tip for you. I'm going to open up my layers panel here, and you'll notice I've accidentally put my spiderweb on my layer with my text. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to select my blend and my outside shape here. I'm just going to hit Command G. It's going to group them. It's going to make it easier to work with this moving forward. And a little pro tip for you. If you have an object and you want to move it to a different layer, instead of expanding your layer group and navigating to it, all you have to do is click on the little square next to your layer here, the little colored square that says indicates selected art. And all you have to do is drag it. And now I've dragged that shape to my other layer here. You can see my text is all on the top layer and my artwork is on the next layer. It's a little handy little pro tip for you there. All right, now that we've got our layers sorted out, let's go back using our smart guides. We're gonna align our rectangle tool with the upper left of our artboard, and we're just gonna drag it all the way to the bottom. So we're gonna create a background for this. I'm gonna switch my fill and stroke color. Because I actually don't want to have a stroke on this, I'm just going to leave that at none. And then I'm going to open up my swatches panel here, and we're going to set it to, I'm just going to pick a color. You could go in here to the color picker and get a specific color if you wanted. I'm just going to set it to one of the color swatches that I have in this file already. Now we need to send it to back so that we can see our spiderweb again. We want it behind our spiderweb, so we're going to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. So now it's behind my spiderweb. There is a little bit of a contrast issue here, so I am going to select my spiderweb, and in my opacity, or you can find it in the transparency window or in the Again, the control bar, I'm just going to bring it down a little bit to make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so it's looking good, but it's not very spooky, so we need to up the spook. So I'm going to select my background shape that I created, and we're going to add a little bit of a vignette to this. It's going to make our design a little bit darker, but it's also going to focus the viewer's attention on the title and the important information in our poster. And so it's serving two purposes, stylistic, but also like composition. So we're going to select our background shape, and I'm just going to hit Command C and Command F to copy and paste in front again. Yes, Cody, need more spook. So I've just made a copy of this rectangle, and this time I'm actually going to bring it in front. So we're doing a lot of arranging, but that's okay. We're going to bring it in front, and it's going to cover up our art for a sec. It is on our art layer, so it's not covering up our text. And we're going to add a gradient to this. So navigating over to our gradient panel, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the radial gradient icon. When I do that, it's going to apply a black to white radial gradient, which is kind of like a vignette, right? But I'm going to specify the colors that I want for this. So in the gradient panel, you'll notice that I've got these two little circles. Those are called gradient stops. And if I double click on one, it allows me to either edit the colors, or I can just grab this purple from my swatches if you use swatches. So I've got this purple in my swatches. I'm just going to grab that and apply it. And I can do the same thing over here. With this white, remember the white here right now is the center of my gradient. So I'm going to click on that and apply it. And now, in order to make a vignette that shows through my design, with that leftmost color stop that's the center of my radial gradient, I'm going to reduce the opacity of this down to 0. So we've essentially made like a window, right? It's a vignette into around the edges of our poster. But it doesn't exactly fit the frame. It's certainly spookier, but it doesn't fit the frame of our design. For that, we're going to go over to the gradient tool. Now, when I select the gradient tool, I'm going to get a circle, and this dashed line circle indicates the shape of my gradient. So you can see here where the transition is happening, that's where that shape is. And you're going to get a couple of different tools. When I hover over the left and the right sides, that's actually going to give me the option to scale. So I can make this have a really, really soft faded edge on the outside with not a lot of that dark, or I can bring it in to make it really, really dark and like concentrated. I'm going to leave it in the middle. The one that I really want you to pay attention to is this top node. When I click and drag this up, that's going to create this oval shape that's going to match the shape of my rectangular poster a little bit better. So we can drag that up, and now you can also rotate this. So it's a little bit easier to see what's happening with the rotate once you've added that little stretch to it. So now that I've added the stretch, you can kind of see when I hover over the outer edges that I can rotate this as well. But I'm not going to do that for today. I'm just going to show you that that's what you could do, because maybe that's what it works for your poster. All right, back in my layers panel, there's one more step I want to do. Because this is really low contrast right now, since we added the dark, I'm just going to click on this circle to select my entire text layer contents and change it to be white, so it's a little bit easier to see. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick one of the lovely titles from our chat here. Let's scroll up. I'm scrolling through. Web design, that's a good one. We're going to change our title to be web design for now. So I'm just going to double click in here, web design. And at this point, it's really kind of up to you to kind of add the information. You can also go to Adobe Fonts, fonts.adobe.com. I'd recommend going to Browse All and clicking on the category that we've been using recently, which is Halloween. You can filter by spooky fonts to add that kind of like spooky vibe to your poster. You can click on this Add Family, and that's going to add the type to your fonts library, so you can use them in your Adobe apps. I've already got one picked, so I'm going to go to Character, or in the contextual toolbar, we'll type in House of Cards. It's one of my favorites, and we'll change it to House of Cards Bold, just like that. So this is an Adobe font if you want to go and find that in the Halloween category. Once you're ready to share this with everybody, if you're satisfied with the way that your design looks, you can go to File, Export, Export for Screens, choose where you want to save it to. I'm going to save it to my desktop, and then choose a PNG or a JPEG. Those are going to probably be the best options if you want to share them in the Discord. Once I hit Export, you're going to want to navigate to the Illustrator Discord. you're just gonna drag that PNG or JPEG in. You're gonna say challenge for the 4th challenge that we've done. You're gonna share it to get feedback from everybody in the Discord. I did want to show off this design. This was by Kanat. This is somebody who shared this in the Discord for the Victorian portrait. They actually worked with another friend here, Medina, to do the animation. This is such a cool project. I love seeing how you guys take the challenges and make them kind of all your own. So that was a lot of fun to see. But that's going to be everything that we've got for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today with the astronaut. Yeah, this was a marketing challenge in Illustrator. We went over the star tool, polar grid, blends, the gradient tool. We are live once a week on Tuesdays moving forward on behance.net/Adobe Live and on the Adobe Live YouTube. There's going to be more live streams coming up after me, so stay right here. Andrew is up after me with the Photoshop challenge, and I hope that you all have a happy Halloween. Bye, everyone!